Welcome to 2020, everybody. This year's gonna get weirder. Yeah, okay. Hold on a second. Let me put down my collar of creepiness there. Okay, now, there you go. I'm professional. Hey, everybody, how you doing? New year, new decade, new One Piece chapter, new backdrop. I finally got a new backdrop. I've had the same damn backdrop for like 3 years. That alone just blew my mind the other day when I realized I've been doing, One Piece reviews for 3 years now. That is insane. I did Bleach for 5, and I don't know, it just felt like at the 3-year mark when I was reviewing Bleach, it seemed like a lot more time had passed. I don't know, but whatever. Anyway, we got new backdrop, all of the Straw Hats. That's right, every single one of them. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus the 10th member, the one that is not really with the crew right now, but he's with them in our hearts. We all know as a fan base he is truly a tried and tested member of the Straw Hat crew, and he will be represented, of course, by Barry D. Brick. He bears the will of D and all that stuff, so of course he is the 10th member. No, Jinbei is on here, but he's kind of, let me pan the camera down a little bit. Yeah, there he is. He's on the very, very bottom because I ran out of space. Whenever Jinbei decides to show up at Wano, Eneru knows when that'll happen. I'll figure out some way to, maybe I'll cram him in between Usopp or Sanji. I'll figure something out here, all right? But as it is now, I kind of ran out of room. But I finally have Frankie up here because Frankie, for whatever reason, was not on the last backdrop, and that was just a sin against Frankie's superness, okay? So here we go, One Piece chapter 968 review titled Oden's Return. Many of you might say, hey, Matt, this isn't really the best translation, and you would be right, it isn't. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. But, I've read through this a few times, and you're like, there are a few moments here where I'm like, alright, that's kind of ambiguous, whether the translation was that or something else. There's one moment in this chapter that, when I first read it through, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to be making a video about that in the future. So, by that time, the official translation will be out, and I'm sure there's a bunch of little minor issues strewn throughout this thing, but in terms of, like, the major plot threads, I think I can do this. In the words of the great Chip Chapley, great media personality, I think I got this. Yeah, I think I got this, honestly. So let's dive right in and let's see if I got this. Show me what you got. All right, so the cover page is simple, all right? Chiffon got captured by the Marines last time. She was in a hair salon getting her hair done up and all that stuff. Marines came in like, hey, yeah, Capone Beiji's in town, and you're very clearly his wife, so yeah, we're gonna capture you now. So the Marines grab Chiffon and run off down the street. Meanwhile, Goatee, member of the Fire Tank Pirates with the giant bazooka machine gun thing on his arm, goes chasing after Chiffon. See, that's easy. That's easy. I don't even need to read the translation for that one. That one's, like, locked on. All right, you go get her, Goatee. You take out that giant chain gun thing you got, and you show him what you got. All right, cool. All right, so moving on, we continue after Laugh Tale. Obviously, we don't pick up at Laugh Tale. If anybody was expecting that, like in the next chapter, it's like, oh, okay, we take you now to Laugh Tale Island, where the pirate Goldie Roger has just discovered the One Piece. Yeah, we skip all over that, which is what I figured. We cut back to wherever Shanks and Buggy were at. They left them at some random harbor town because Buggy was sick. Shanks stayed with him, so no, they did not go to Laugh Tale. However, a big question was, well, even if they did not go to Laugh Tale, obviously, Roger would not just abandon them. He would not just be like, all right, men, we found Laugh Tale. We know what that great treasure is. Let's just sail off into the distance. What about Shanks and Buggy, sir? Huh? Oh, no, they're like 14 now. They'll be all right on their own. So they go back. They obviously go back, and we get a scene with Shanks where apparently, now remember, this is all from the perspective of Oden, all right? This is all from Oden's logbook that he's writing in, okay? So he's not privy to every piece of information. He is a very limited narrator throughout this story. He's not like Morgan Freeman kind of narrator where he just knows everything because Morgan Freeman is God. No, he's like, look, Shanks went up to Roger and asked him some questions about what he found. Roger gave him some kind of reply. I'm not sure what the reply was. And then Shanks just burst into tears. All right. Now, that is something that could be considered like, it might be like, yeah, Shanks, well, we found the treasure, but we were a little bit too early, and I'm gonna die soon, so I'll probably never see it. I could figure that would probably be the case. Like, Roger would be like, well, what can you do, right? That's just how life, deals you the cards. But Shanks is a lot younger, and Shanks looks up to Roger, as his captain and all that. So maybe Shanks is, like, genuinely crying because, even though Roger is putting on a facade, maybe Shanks is like, oh, that's not fair, it's not fair. Roger's the king. He should have been able to see it. He should have been able to be alive for long enough to witness what this was, and he didn't. I gotta be honest with you, it would be kind of disappointing, right? If you went through this giant journey for this one endpoint, and you get there, and it's like, yeah, sorry, you gotta come back in 10 years, and, Roger doesn't have that long to live. So Roger's kind of resigned himself to his fate, but Shanks is really upset by this. We don't get to see Buggy in this chapter, so we don't know what's up with him. I'm assuming he recovers from his disease, right? So we cut all over the world where the collective population is freaking out over Roger's exploits. We get a few answers here. Number one, we find out now, oh yeah, the world government's been calling him Gold Roger, not Goldie Roger. And because the crew has now been to Laugh Tale and they learned about the Void Century and the ancient weapons and the will of the D, they know the reason why that is. Except, of course, they don't say it. They're just looking at the paper and they're like, oh, okay, now we get why the world government decided to change your name. The world government isn't stupid, all right? Well, Spondum's part of that, so, he takes up a good 10% of the stupidity of all the world government put together, but the world government knows what Roger's real name is, okay? It's not like they're doing him any favors by like, oh, well, his name is Gold D. Roger, but Gold Roger just has more of a ring to it. I'm sorry, Gold D. Roger! That has more of a ring to it, right? So let's just call him Gold Roger on all the wanted posters. Now, the world government knows he's a D, but the world government is an enemy of the D, the enemies of God, as it were. So that's the reason why they changed it. Now not the Straw Hats, now the Roger crew know about it, but they don't exactly explain the reasoning. They just like, oh, that's the reason why they changed it. Yeah, well, anyway, Roger is pretty happy about the new title he's gotten, King of the Pirates. He's like, yeah, yarg! King of the Pirates, eh? Well, that gets my mustache a-tingling something fierce. I like that, right? So that's pretty cool there. Also, something really big here, and this is something that honestly harkens back to the 4Kids One Piece days, okay? Do you guys remember the opening of the 4Kids dub of One Piece, where you had Seto Kaiba going over, he's like, fame, power, and wealth. Gold Roger achieved this and all the other things the world had to offer, right? And then you get Gold Roger in the 4Kids dub, whose voice in the 4Kids dub actually was pretty solid.
I left everything I own in one piece.
Okay, that was the 4Kids dub. That was the first introduction I ever had to this franchise, period, okay? Then, later on, when Funimation started dubbing One Piece, and I started watching, like, the Japanese version and all that stuff, the original, Roger said something closer to, I left everything I own in one place. Now you just got to find it! Something like that. So, it was actually kind of dubious. Like, did Roger first call it One Piece? Or did, like, the collective citizens and, like, the people of the world that were excited about treasure dub it the One Piece? Well, at any rate, all of the world decides to call it the One Piece. Roger did not come up with that name, okay? And this makes sense because I think one of the Roger's execution has been done in so many different renditions over the years, so many different versions of that day. But there's one scene, one in particular I remember, where when Roger's about to be executed, some random guy in the freaking crowd is like, hey, Pirate King, where'd you keep your treasure? The One Piece. Like, the random dude in the crowd called it One Piece before Roger even said, I left everything I own in one. So the name existed before Roger's last words, alright? So, yeah, I guess the whole world had to call it something, right? The Great Treasure, the Apex Treasure? No, that doesn't sound good. It's more of just, like, one chunk of treasure. It's in one place. And so they just how rumors spread and how these things go, they ended up calling it One Piece. And Roger's a little bit like, oh, all right, well, I guess that works. But at any rate, they got bigger things to worry about right now, because let me ask you a serious question. After a pirate crew discovers this amazing treasure, this balls-out treasure that's greater than anything else you could possibly imagine, all your dreams are just culminating at this damn treasure, what's the first thing you're gonna do? You know, are you gonna set out to sea and try to find the treasure itself, or are you gonna set out to sea to try to find the guy that found the treasure and force it out of him? I think that's the smart move, honestly. It's more effective, if anything else. So, they all know Roger now. He's world infamous. See, they know his Jolly Roger. They know his ship, the Oro Jackson. So, a bunch of pirate crews are like, Yarg, let's go find that dang guy Roger! You know, that dang guy Roger. Okay, you know what? That bastard Roger! There we go. We can fit a few curses in here. The Marines are obviously on super high alert. Roger decides that, you know, because he's getting to the end of his life and all that stuff, and he's got some other stuff I think he feels like he needs to do at this point, kind of is like his final journey as a pirate and as a man, he decides to disband the Roger crew, and we figured that that was going to happen. He gets all of the crew together, and he's like, all right, men, you know, you've fought along with me for all these years and all that stuff, and he's like, but today, the Roger crew is disbanded. And of course, everyone's very shocked by that and everything. But I think Roger knows that it's like, hey guys, we already saw what we needed to see. There's nothing we can do about it. This harkens back to what Rayleigh said at Sabaody. Like, you know, we were maybe a bit too fast. We were a bit too hasty. Roger knows he's gonna die. So he's like, listen, I mean, I could spend like the last few weeks and months of my life traveling around being constantly attacked by every pirate out to make a name for themselves. The Marines are constantly there. You know, we could do that, but I think Roger felt like he had a few other things he needed to take care of, and also he doesn't want to put his crew... I think, if anything, Roger feels like his crew, they did what they needed to do. They beat the game, so to speak. You know, there's no need to, like, keep going grinding in the random areas because the game's already beaten, you're already level capped. It's like, everything's good. I'm gonna disband the crew now. Now, at this point, we have a little bit of a flashback, okay? We cut back to when the Oro Jackson was going through the ocean floor, okay? And we have the Sea Kings having a speech. This is the part of the chapter where the translation's not that perfect, and also I'm gonna do another video after the official one's out, because this is a big thing. The Sea Kings, in this version anyway, are talking about the birth of their king. All right, they use the word king here. And there's like, okay, our king's gonna be born soon. And when the two kings meet again, the time we've waited for oh so long will finally occur. They also say this one may be the right one. And they also say that it's 10 years until their birth of this king, and then another 15 years for them to grow. And Roger's just, he's like, who's talking down here? But the Sea Kings are not responding to Roger, because they're like, okay, what's this weird, you know, monkey human person talking down here? Like, he can't hear us, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, right? So, at least from this version, what I can extrapolate is the Sea Kings are talking about Joy Boy and Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi is the king of the Sea Kings in a context. I'm not really sure if the Sea Kings would use queen or king, considering Shirahoshi is, of course, female, but the Sea Kings might just be using king as a generalized term, as just like the leader of the Sea Kings, the commander of the Sea Kings. So, you know, that might be an issue, but I don't think it's that big of one. Because the way, and also we get a flashback of Charlie talking about how in 10 years, the princess will be born that can command Sea Kings. So one of these, I'm pretty sure the Sea Kings are referring to, is Shirahoshi's birth. They say 10 years for her to be born, and then another 15 for her to grow. Now, Shirahoshi is 16 right now, but you could look at this more of like a prophecy sort of thing. Like, in around 10 years, she will be born, or our king will be born. In around 15 years, you know, they will be old enough to actually fulfill this prophecy. Shirahoshi is 16 right now when Luffy and the other Straw Hats met her, and unless we have have some other big time skip, she's probably going to stay 16 until the end of the story, right? So, yeah, now, the Sea Kings also specifically mentioned this time might be the right time. Last chapter, it was mentioned, first off, it was mentioned erroneously that a new princess, a new Poseidon, was born every century to command the Sea Kings. The correct translation to that was every few centuries a new Poseidon is born. So it's not like, 800 years ago the original Poseidon, and then 700 a new one, 600, 500, 400. No, it's every few. So even though it's less than 8, there were probably a few other reincarnations since the Void Century of Poseidon. It's just they didn't work out too well. The way the Sea Kings are talking about it kind of is like, we have to wait centuries and centuries. We've waited so long. And whenever a Poseidon is born, maybe it doesn't work out too well, and then that Poseidon lives through her life and then dies, or something other happens and she dies through other means, and they have to start the cycle all over again. Like, let's say the original Poseidon, well, we know the original Poseidon lived over 800 years ago during the Void Century. She had a relationship with Joy Boy. Joy Boy had something to do with the Ancient Kingdom. He had something to do with the One Piece. He left the One Piece behind. That seems to be what we're implying so far. That didn't work out. They both died, assuming that Joy Boy is dead. They both died. Let's say a couple hundred years later, like 600 years since the present storyline, another Poseidon was born. And the Sea Kings are like, oh, good, we can try this again. But then something happened there and it didn't work out, and then she died. And like, okay. And then maybe a couple, 300 years since the present storyline, someone else was born. Like, all right, maybe this time. And then it didn't work that time. So it probably only happened maybe, I would say 2-3 times maximum since the Void Century where this reincarnation cycle has occurred, and it just didn't work out. But this time, the Sea Kings are especially restless because they're like feeling it. This might be it. Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs? Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs? This is happening. This one we have a really good feeling that in just wait 10 more years for her to be born, and then another 15 or so for them to grow up, and then they're going to meet each other, these two kings, one king of the Sea Kings, and then another king, which we're assuming is Joy Boy, possibly the reincarnation of Joy Boy. That's the information I got from this. Once again, I'll be talking about this at more scope, when we get a proper translation. This is kind of a big deal. Anytime we focus on the Sea Kings talking, it's kind of a big deal, because the Sea Kings have been around for centuries, possibly millennia. If there's any creatures in this world that know a lot about everything, it would probably be these things, right? Because they've been around for a long time. Also like Zunisha, any really ancient animal, right?
Hey guys, I just wanted to give a little bit of a final footnote to that discussion with the Sea Kings. There was also a mention of the whales that I forgot to bring up, and that's not even a translation thing. That was in the version I read. I just forgot to bring it up. It was said even the whales are restless now. Now, when they say whales, I'm assuming they mean island whales. I'm assuming they're not meaning regular old whales, because island whales are way more significant in One Piece. I think this all ties back to the Red Line theory, because even the whales that the Straw Hats ran into when they arrived in the New World, that large pod of island whales, they were also crashing their heads against the Red Line. Laboon crashed his head against the Red Line. I made a whole video about that where I basically talked about how the Red Line is an unnatural thing that didn't always exist, and really ancient creatures like the island whales that probably also lived for a very, very long time have it just in their nature, in their blood, to fight against that. It's like migratory, maybe the island whales are supposed to migrate from one side of the world to another, and that's the way they've always done it for literally millennia, but then the Red Line was constructed through some means we don't know, and that disrupts their migration patterns, and that's why they constantly butt heads against it. If the awakening of this Sea King, the Poseidon, results in the destruction of the Red Line, then the island whales would certainly be very happy about that. So that's where that all ties back in. Also, one last thing, the egg on Roger's ship, that giant Yoshi egg, I checked, and yeah, you get to see that Yoshi egg on the Oro Jackson after they leave Laugh Tale. So that's just one last thing to mention. If you were curious, maybe they left the giant Yoshi egg at Laugh Tale as part of the treasure. They did not, because the egg is still on the ship. Either that or Oda forgot, but I'm assuming he didn't, and I'm assuming that's not part of the treasure. So whenever we see the Oro Jackson, wherever that ship is at currently, that's probably when we'll see the giant Yoshi egg. All right, then.
So that's the intent I got from that. You know, and who else could they be talking about, really? Because they're talking, like, being born in 10 years. I actually went over on the timeline to see. I'm like, all right. Just to double check on this, which other characters were born 16 years prior to the storyline and during this prophecy? Because this takes place 26 years ago. 10 years later, 16 years ago, this king will be born, or this, you know, leader will be born. All right, well, we have Shirahoshi, of course, prime suspect, but we also got Derringer of the Doflamingo Pie. He was born around that time. He's 16 right now. Possibly. Also, Karu. Now look. I know what you're thinking, but let's just keep an open mind about this, alright? Kaido is obviously a duck. Karu is a duck. Karu might be the other king. Might happen. By the way, it can't be Luffy, because this was 26 years ago. Luffy would have been born 7 years after this. And another 15. The timelines don't really work up for it to be Luffy. So I'm assuming the Sea Kings are talking about Shirahoshi. But we also have Rebecca. Hey, they both have pink hair. Could be Rebecca. And to round it out, it could also be Charlotte Pudding. Now, at first, you might laugh at that, but you have to also remember she was a member of the Third Eye Clan, or a half member of the Third Eye Clan, and she's apparently got the ability to read poneglyphs, or has that potential to awaken that ability. So, yeah, could be Shirahoshi meeting with Pudding and then unlocking the true secrets of the world. I think that makes perfect sense. But no, it's Shirahoshi. So yeah, there's that. Moving on next, we have Roger talking to Rayleigh, and Rayleigh's like, well, who's gonna find the One Piece, you know, now? And Roger's like, well, I'm thinking my son will, or my child will. And Rayleigh's just like, but you don't even have a child. And, you know, Roger's like, well, there's still time. So I guess that was the moment where Roger realized, because remember, you know, when we were getting the flashback with Rouge and Ace and everything, like, the Marines were going around trying to find every pregnant woman in a particular area that Roger might have had some special time with. So, I guess Roger decided to disband the crew and head out onto the seas to try to, you know, find sire a child and be like, well, I know what I must do now, yarg. And, okay, well, I mean, it worked. Ace existed. Ace existed, but yeah, all right, it worked. Yeah, okay, so that's, you know, Roger decided to have a kid right here. All right, fair enough. I mean, that's the logical conclusion. It's like, all right, well, I'm gonna die soon. I can't get to the One Piece. Might as well have a child, and then he could grow up or she could grow up and find the One Piece. Makes sense. Do you think Roger might have another child out there somewhere in the world? That is not an impossible thing. I mean, it would be kind of weird to just be introduced. Oh, by the way, yeah, here's a character that is Roger's child. Roger had a daughter also from another woman in another part of the world. And she bears, like, a striking resemblance to Ace. That's why we, you know, like, she's obviously Ace's half-sister. You know, like, it's not impossible. That could actually be the case. You know, I don't think they're gonna do anything like, oh, this person that we've known for years is, like, it turns out Nami is actually, you know, that actually doesn't make any sense with the timelines, but you know what I mean, like, yeah. No, that actually completely debunked now, because Robin is 30, and that would have only have worked if Roger would have met Olvia long before this conversation happened, when he was disbanding the crew. And Rayleigh says very specifically here, like, you don't have any children. So, unless Roger met Olvia and had some, you know, had a nice romantic evening, and just never found out, you know, like Olvia never told him, and he just spent some time at Ohara, then he left. I mean, the Roger pirates know about Ohara, because Rayleigh specifically mentioned Clover's name, you know, when they were at Sabaody. So I'm assuming they've at least went to Ohara. I guess they could just know about him. But it seems like some familiarity there. Like, they've been to Ohara and they talked to the scholars there. Maybe 30-something years ago, Roger and Olvia got together, and he never even knew he had a child. Olvia never told him, and he left before anything could happen. And then obviously the other crew members wouldn't know, because even he doesn't know. I mean, it's not impossible. Hey, if nothing else, Olvia has silvery white hair. Robin has black hair, so it seems to imply that her dad did have black hair also. So that's all we got to go on here, but it works. I mean, I'm not ready to call that a debunk yet. All right, so Roger's pretty happy. They throw one last kind of party, some sort of shindig, a going away party. We mentioned Izo a little bit. Roger says he's going to go see Whitebeard one last time before he dies. That is this scene right here. So I'm glad Oda brought that up. He's like, all right, yeah, that scene with the cherry blossoms and everything, that still needs to happen. So I'm going to go see Whitebeard one more time for that final sake drink. And he also brings up, maybe I should send Izo back to Wano. And they kind of like, well, Izo's kind of doing his own thing. You don't have to force him to go back or whatever. Izo will do his own thing here, okay? So finally, he says the last words to Rayleigh. We don't get these last words. Once again, Oden does not, walk over to them and is like, hey, what are you guys talking about? So we don't know what he says to Rayleigh, but Rayleigh starts to cry. And then Roger heads out. Crocus gives him a large supply of really potent medicine, but also tells him, hey, this is the last stages of your disease. You're terminally ill, okay? So it's like, it's not in years at this point. It's in months, and probably not even very many of those. So he heads out from the Roger crew to go and find someone to, have a good night with and then make a child, I guess. That's his prime goal here, okay? So the crew, though, it's a very tear-filled goodbye where Oden is writing in his logbook like, a farewell to a true man, a farewell to your captain. There are no tears. You do not send them off with tears. But as it actually happens, they were all bawling their eyes out. Everybody. Scopper, Shanks, Buggy, Oden. They were all crying over the departure of Roger. So it seems like the way that he's writing it in the book, he's like, I don't want them to know about what actually went down. He's like, we did not cry when Roger departed, but in reality, they did. So to save face, I think Oden wrote something different in his logbook. Okay. So Roger left, and that's the last we see of Roger in this chapter. Farewell, Pirate King! So then we cut over to Wano, where they're going to go drop Oden off, because he's going to go return there and figure out what's going on with his country and everything. So they go back to Wano. They're looking at the shipwrecks that are around in the rapids. Oden says, yeah, if you follow the wrong route, you're just going to get swept up by these whirlpools and rapids, and you're just going to get crushed. And the shipwrecks never get recovered, because it's too dangerous. So the shipwrecks from, decades and centuries trying to gain access to Wano have just been crushed against those giant pillars leading into the island, right? Oden also mentions, there's another moment that's kind of iffy with the translations. Up until now, there has been a reason for the country's isolation. This reason we don't know, but it connects back to the Kozuki clan in some way. However, they will have to reopen their borders on the day that Joy Boy returns or reappears. So it seems to imply there, Joy Boy, at least something they learned from the Rio Poneglyphs or something they learned at Laugh Tale, Joy Boy will be coming back. Now, does that mean Joy Boy reincarnated into another body? Or does that mean no, Joy Boy is still alive and he's going to return? Or does that mean, considering we're getting prophecies and stuff involved here, yeah, there was a Joy Boy that existed this many years ago, but it's not really a name, it's more of a title, and the bearer of that title, yeah, they have to do something to receive it, but when they receive that, maybe the title of Joy Boy is given to the leader of the D clan, or whoever exemplifies what it means to be a D or something, and then something like that. It's more of a title. So that'll happen in the current storyline that we have right now. That one probably is Luffy. I mean, he's the main character, that would make perfect sense. There's a connection between Joy Boy and the Straw Hat if we're going to go along with the theories with Eam and that giant hat in the freezer under Marijua, under Castle Pangea. So, I mean, if it turns out Joy Boy, honestly, if it's a reincarnation, or a title, or just his long descendant or something, I'd be okay with it being Luffy, because he's Luffy, right? And that would kind of, you know, tie everything back together. Luffy wouldn't really get anything into, like, prophecies or whatever. Luffy's not the kind of guy that's like, oh, well, because the prophecy said so. And I'm not really a big fan of that trope. I'm really not. Like, you know, the prophecy child will be born in 1,000 years. And the reason why he's so badass is because he's the prophecy child. No, it's a little different with Luffy. Luffy worked really, really hard. He wasn't a natural talent. When he first got his devil fruit, it took him a long time to get to the point where he was at. And he got beaten down quite a few times, and he had to come up with his own techniques and ingenuity and all that crap. So it's not like he was like, you know, as soon as he was born, he was like Oden and automatically badass, right? So yeah, it's a little bit different, kind of the prophecy thing, but I'm going to assume if, yeah, Joy Boy's going to return at some point, it's probably going to be Luffy in some aspect, whatever that means, okay? So anyway, Oden leaves with a smile on his face. The crew is crying for him as well. I don't think they're all crying. I don't see Rayleigh crying. Shanks and Buggy and Scopper and Crocus, and they're still all crying, but Rayleigh just seems to be like, bye, Oden, have a good one. So he returns to Wano. So that's the second half of this chapter where Oden returns to his homeland for good, all right? Which would be, if we're understanding what actually happens to him until his death, okay? So he returns to Curry. Toki is, of course, there. She's like, Oden, you're back! Oh my god, thank you! This is, 25 years ago, because we're not quite at 24 years ago, maybe 25, 24, maybe on the border of that. Oden's been gone for about 6 years or so, if you want to say it, at the latest about 6 years. So Toki's there, Momonosuke, Hiyori, he has his children, they've grown up a little bit, of course, and then you have Kinemon arrive, and he's like, hey, scumbag, how are you doing? You know, like, he's happy to see his daimyo, but at the same time, it's like, are you gonna stay this time, or are you just gonna rob us of a poneglyph etching and leave again? You know, so Kinemon's there, and he's like, alright, you're back. Finally! Alright? So, first thing, everybody in the land of Curry is really happy about Oden's return. They're not judging him at all. They're not looking at him like, that's the guy that left us for 6 years so he can journey with a weird pirate guy. You know, like, no, they're actually really understanding, like, Oden-sama, welcome back! And that's because all of Lady Toki. For the last few years, since Toki returned, she recovered from her illness, and she worked tirelessly to improve the people's lives of Wano. She was right there in the fields, tilling and harvesting along with all the other villagers. She was pulling her own weight, and all the while she was speaking on Oden's behalf of like, you have to understand this is what Oden has to do. There's a greater meaning to this. Oden needs to adventure with this. Please do not judge him for it. He's a great man. He will return and all that stuff. And Toki was in there, you know, doing peasant work essentially. She's the wife of a daimyo. In terms of tradition of Wano, this really doesn't connect usually, but Toki is a little different, okay? So because of Toki's pleas and her, what's the good word, what am I thinking of here? Reputation? No, it's something that's like, vouching. Yeah, she's vouching for Oden. That's what it was, okay? So we got that. That's all good. The people of Curry still greatly respect Oden. All right. Now we move on to what's going on with the country itself. First, we mention Ashura Doji and Denjiro because they're not present. Neko's there, Inu's there, Kiku's there. Everybody's there except Ashura and Denjiro. Nekomamushi mentions that Ashura has left about a year ago to go and join the Mountain Bandits crew. There's another translation I read where he's kind of trying to keep the gang of Yakuza out, but I think it makes more sense considering where we see Ashura Doji or Shutenmaru right now. He went off to join the Mountain Bandit group, or to lead this Mountain Bandit group, okay? I'm thinking because of the situation we're in Wano right now, Ashura Doji was a little bit more pragmatic, and he was like, hey, listen, we need to get a little bit more rough here considering the way that Orochi is running this place now. So he went, and we can't do this with like policies and like honor and stuff. We need to get stuff done. We need food. We kind of need food, so we're gonna get it, you know what I mean? So I think, like, Ashura Doji started the gang of Mountain Bandits with really good intentions, or kind of like pushed against a wall, and it's like, hey, with the way Orochi is going with this, in order to get the stuff we need to survive, we're gonna have to break the law because Orochi makes the law and it's bullshit, and that's what we're going to have to do. So Doji went out to create a Mountain Bandit group. Okay, that connects back. Denjiro decided to also leave about a year ago, and he's been wandering around Wano, borrowing money, and then he repays the money, but then he borrows more, like he's loan sharking or something. And, or no, he's going to loan sharks to get the money. And Oden's like, mountain bandits and like borrowing money, that doesn't seem like anything you should be proud of. This seems to imply, at least from this translation, Denjiro is the witching hour boy, because borrowing money and giving it to, that's probably what he's doing. He's like, I need to figure out something here to improve the people's lives outside of Curry. Curry seems to still be maintained because of the strong conviction that the citizens have for Oden and Toki. So Curry seems to be that last bastion. The rest of Wano is not looking too good, okay? And we finally sit down and we learn exactly what's been going on with Orochi. And Kinemon's like, alright, so Oden, first thing, you might have noticed the giant factories pumping black smog into our once beautiful air. That's a thing that exists now. Also, you may have noticed the factories promoting slave labor, and those large guys with horns sticking out of their heads and giant clubs watching over them, and beating them down whenever they would do something so crazy as ask for a break or for food. So yeah, that's the situation we have now. We learn about Orochi. Oden is, of course, taken aback by this, because the way that Orochi got into power was because the witch transformed into Sukiyake. This is also where Oden learns about the death of his father. He wishes, you know, ah, damn it sucks I couldn't have been there for his last moments. But of course, the witch turned into Sukiyake, and is like, oh yeah, and Oden as well. And was like, oh yeah, here's Orochi. He's my sworn brother. You make him a member of the court. And then Sukiyake, after she transformed into him, is like, oh yes, I appoint my successor, the interim shogun, will be Orochi until Oden returns. So, through this trickery, Orochi got power. And Oden's like, that makes no sense. He must have been tricking everybody to get what he wanted. And so we learn about how he's backed by Kaido. And we learn about this moment where it's like, all right, there was a guy that was sentenced to death. His entire family was sentenced to death. And because Orochi does as he pleases, they have to do it. However, they decided this was the last straw. The scabbards did. They're like, this is bullcrap. We're going to go take care of Orochi once and for all. So they did attempt to revolt. They did attempt, because yeah, even though it's tradition in Wano that you listen to the Shogun is the ruler, Orochi is doing some really nefarious shit here, right? He's just like, ah yes, I am Lord Orochi, I am the new Shogun of this country, and my first decree is to build a bunch of factories, and you will all work in those factories as long as I command it. Like, you know, at first you might be like, oh, okay, well that's bringing some new industry into the country, that sounds like a... And then cut to 1 week later where it's like, okay, yeah, could really use a lunch break right about now. But he's the Shogun, yeah, he sure is. You'd figure, who fell? Okay, well, Chopper did. I knew that was going to happen at some point. All right, so I'll put him back up later. All right, so, you'd figure at some point someone was gonna revolt. All right, it was gonna happen. It's like, all right, he's the Shogun, but this is getting kind of crazy. So Kinemon and everybody in Kanjuro, they launched an attack at the capital, but Orochi figured that this would happen because the person that died, I believe, was from Curry. So they figured there was going to be retaliation from Curry. So instead, they sent Kaido's forces and Orochi's forces into Curry to attempt to get rid of Momonosuke, who's the rightful heir. Okay, if Oden's not coming back, Momonosuke is the threat. All right, because that's still the Kozuki line there, okay? Now, luckily, Kawamatsu and Inu were still at the castle, and they managed to rebuke the attack. Kaido himself was not present during that particular attack. That was more of just like a standard assassination plot, okay? During this plot, though, Toki ended up taking an arrow in her leg, like right in her thigh. And this was a few months back. This was like 6 months ago. So Oden is like, oh, Toki, well, let me see your leg. Toki shows him her leg, and it has a scar on it, but it's already healed. And so Oden, as you could figure from this, is furious. So they attempted to revolt. It didn't work. And nobody has attempted it since then because Kaido is a thing and his forces are so strong and Kaido is a monster. Like, this has already been known to the country. Like, you can't fight against Orochi. You can try, but the 9 red scabbards attempted this and they failed, so yeah, it's kind of rough there. So Oden, though, he gets up and he's in just fury mode, and he's like, and and Toki is like, please calm down, Oden, please calm down, you can't. And even Kinemon's like, you can't do this, man, it's not gonna end well. And Oden's like, I know what kind of man Orochi is. He snivels and hides behind a strong pirate to get what he wants. And he just, boom! Oden just bursts out of the door and he takes Enma and Ame no Habakiri. He starts sprinting for the capital at full speed. He's jumping over the rivers of Wano and he's like, he's turned my country into hell. I'll make him pay. You know, I know the kind of guy he is. And so he arrives at the flower capital and it is a massacre. Like, he's running straight for the steps to the palace and people are like, Oden, please stop. And the other citizens are like, Oden is back. He's gonna take back the shogun's seat. And Oden is like a wheat thresher. He's just, anybody that even attempts to stop him, excuse me, sir, you're gonna have to apply for an audience with the shogun. You know, they just get hacked to pieces. He's just cutting through everybody. He gets to the steps. He hacks down the guards. He gets to the front gate, busts down that freaking thing, goes in, starts slashing up all of Orochi's guards, and then he makes it to the throne room. Orochi, as you can figure, he's in the freaking throne room, and he's like, I am Lord Orochi, dancing all the time. I am Lord Orochi. Hi, Oden, how are you? Oh, God, no! So Oden busts down the freak, you know how they have those traditional sliding doors in Japan? Yeah, he just, and just rips that open, and he walks in with all the fury of a demon that's just been summoned from the lowest depths of hell, and he walks slowly like the Terminator, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers walk toward freaking Orochi. He's just, and Orochi's like, wait a second, Oden! If you attack me, Kaido will come down with all the fury! He won't stay silent over this! I want you to think a little bit what you've done to this country. And Orochi's like, oh no! He's crazy! And that's where the chapter ends. Also, I just bring it up because I want to make sure I connect back to everything here. It's not available in this version, but I did read a spoiler that said the last scene of this chapter, the last panel, was a scene of Kaido. I don't know if that was a failure. I don't know if that was like an inaccurate spoiler, or I don't know if that was just cut off here and not included here, but I felt like I should mention it because that kind of does tie this whole thing back together. But also the last scene of Orochi just like, you know, being scared shitless as Oden is slowly walking toward him with Enma and Ame no Habakiri drawn. So, it's kind of sad. It really is, because it's like, they're all, like, even Kinemon and the others are kind of resigned, like, Oden, dude, like, if you would have showed up right at the beginning, like, if Orochi took power and then, like, the next few weeks, next few months, you got back and you cut him out and you removed him from power before he had time to ally with Kaido, before he had time to build up all this amassment of power in the factories, like if you would have done that early, it probably would have been okay, even with him being the Shogun for a little while. But the thing is, it's been years, Oden. It's been years. We kind of already lost. You know, you've waited too long to return. I mean, they don't say that to Oden, but I think Oden feels that. The Scabbards all feel that. They just don't want to tell him. But Oden feels like, all right, I'm 17 hours late for work, but it's time to run into the office. You know, it's kind of too late, but we know it's Oden, and we know Oden is the one that left the scars on Kaido, so I'm thinking where this is gonna go is that he's gonna back Orochi into a corner, and he's gonna be like, I'm so sorry! Oden might be like, there's no point in cutting you down because you're not the one that I realize is the real threat here. You know, you would have been overthrown in a year if it wasn't for Kaido, if there wasn't for that apparent, like, the monster people are talking about. Oden's never even met Kaido at this point. Maybe he heard about him through Whitebeard and through Roger. They might have mentioned him at some point. But it's like, I have to take out Kaido, and then maybe he might make a beeline for Onigashima where Kaido is at. Maybe he's already set up base there. Wherever Kaido's at the current point, he's going to set out to try to find him, and that's when Oden and Kaido are going to have their epic slash, and Orochi's probably going to do some sort of, like, backstabbing thing and manipulate him to the point where he can get captured, and that's where it's going to tie into the whole, you know, Oden pot being dunked into that. It's probably going to tie back into that. But we know Oden can't slice down Orochi right here. And even in the present storyline, it's not like Orochi has a giant scar over his face or something, like Oden slashed him, but he survived or anything. So there's something that's going to stop Oden from attacking Orochi here, whether it be Kaido breaking in or whether it be Oden himself realizing, like, you know, you're just a sniveling little ant. I can get rid of you literally anytime I want with my pinky finger, but the real threat is this Kaido. I need to take care of him right now, then I'll come back for your ass. And so he heads out, and that's probably going to tie back to Kaido and all that stuff. So, that's the chapter. Pretty intense there, pretty crazy. Apologies for the lacking in translation and all that, but we'll cover that in a future one, so don't worry about that. How much, you know, Oden fighting against through all the palace guards and going up and against Orochi, how amazing that was. I'm still more interested in the whole, you know, speech about the Sea Kings and the Kings and the, you know, arriving and everything like that, and then Joy Boy's, like, next return. That's the stuff I'm more interested in, so we'll wait until a better translation comes out for that, and then I'll make a follow-up about that. But, yeah, crazy chapter. Hope you guys enjoyed. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Hope you guys have a good one, everybody. Have a happy new year. Where'd my glasses go? Where'd my funny 2020 glasses? Oh, there they are.